Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Sales Manager Academy podcast. As always, I'm your host Omar, and we talk about leadership in the small boutique retail space, right? What does that mean? We're talking about wireless, we're talking about AV, we're talking about appliances, we're talking about furniture, we're talking about everything outside of big box retail, where it really is important to have a true understanding about what you're offering, what you're selling, what you can bring to the table for not just the organization, but more importantly, for the clients, for the customers that you have, because we're looking for that repeat business. We're looking for those customers to come back because our people are masters of their craft. And that's what we want them to aspire to. So this whole notion of I gotta hire, new people and they gotta know what to do within 2 weeks, that doesn't fly here. We're here to talk about how we can upscale our people's skills so that they can perform at the level that we're asking them to. Okay. And one of the biggest things right now that you might be seeing, yes, a lot of our locations right now are seeing a downturn when it comes to traffic, right? We get it. I see it. Gas is getting higher, right? The job market's not the best for some people. I've mentioned this before. When it comes down to time for economic downturn, it's not that the entire economy is going through a downturn. It's that there's going to be a section of the economy of the population that is going to be hit the hardest, and that's going to ripple into everything else. Now, is it possible to be successful during these downturns? Yes. It does require us to be able to be involved more as leaders to ensure that our people are actually there getting trained and developed. If all you're doing is just sending messages, hey, what's going on? What are the numbers? Stop bullshitting yourself. That's not how you lead. That's not how you're going to get performance up. That's a great way to increase fraud happening at your locations and chargebacks happening, right? Because they're just trying to push the sell and they're not closing the sell. And now we get a shit ton back of returns and exchanges, what starts eating at the margins. So if you're running at a 15 to 30% margin, right, for your profits, and then that starts to increase, and then that starts to eat at 10 to 15%, that's really going to hurt your bottom line. So you need to understand as a leader, as an owner operator, that when it comes to training and developing your people, it's not just sending messages. It is truly developing, spending time to ensure that your people are getting developed properly. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to do 8-hour training sessions that you got to take them out for a whole weekend, because statistically speaking, that is a great way to waste everybody's fucking time. We know this. When it comes to the cone of learning, the pyramid of learning, we know that 80% of what they learn in one of those sessions, in one of those 8-hour plus trainings, is gonna go away. They will not retain it. They will not remember it. They will not implement it. That is proven. That is what we are looking at. Okay. Now, you have to understand that, because on the flip side, about 10 to maybe 20% of what they learn that weekend, they'll retain. And that might be impactful for some. For the most, it's not, because after about 30 days, that is also going to fall off the wayside, because there's no way for them, more importantly, to be able to implement that and actually be able to retain it. We don't retain things by just learning about it. We retain things by being able to put it in practice. That is the most valuable thing that we can do. So the most important thing that you can do is work on your people's habits. Okay. There's a book called The Power of Habits by Charles Duhigg. If you haven't picked it up, pick it up. It's probably one of the best, most influential books I have read when it comes to not just human psychology, but more importantly, human habits. It talks about not necessarily how to change habits, but how to better understand it. The frameworks that I have built, the framework that I have used throughout my career, this played a huge part before I truly understood it, and after I read it and had that aha, okay, this is what the fuck I'm doing. That's exactly what's going to be happening. Okay. In it, he talks about the habit loop, and it's something you guys have heard me talk about. Okay. Where we're talking about something that happens, a routine that occurs, right? So something triggers your people, they go into a set routine, and then they're looking for that reward. Okay. Right now, they're running into autopilot. they're on auto mode. And you guys see this because you're wondering what the hell's going on with the numbers? What's going on? Do this, do that. Why? And you're just banging on the fucking keyboard. What's going on with the numbers? Somebody, do something for us. Hey, what? Okay. But where's the training? Where's the focus? Okay. If you are going after your local leaders, asking this, but you're not going around doing the training, focusing on ensuring that they're implementing the training, that becomes very difficult. Okay. Oftentimes, it's not a will issue, it's a skill issue. Your people want to succeed, but they don't understand what is causing that disconnect. Okay. And that's what you have to look at. So when it comes to training, you need to focus on their foundational level because your people will not rise to the occasion. They're going to fall back to their level of training. What does that mean? If you only gave your people 2 weeks of training or worse, just said, hey, welcome, these are your logins, learn on the floor, you can't be upset at the level of productivity or lack of productivity that they have. Instead, flip it and start focusing on small 15-minute coaching sessions so that they can start to reframe and relearn what they're doing. If a customer comes in and you're at an AV location and your employee is waiting for that customer and says, hey, I'm ready to buy, but all they're getting are what they call tire kickers, window shoppers, where they're just coming in and they just want to see, like, I just want to get pricing, I want to get an idea. If your people can't convert that into a site survey, into a let's take a look at your space and actually be able to give you a better adequate quote so I can quote you on not just the products, right? Because I can give you this, but I don't know about the specifics. I don't know the actual length that you're going to need for your runs. I don't know if you actually truly have wiring there or not. If you have power, which you need to have it. If you have the right length distance that you're going to need for those screens, for the seating and the speakers to be able to get that experience, right? If we don't have that, I can't give you that information. I can't give you what you're really looking for. I can showcase things to you, but I don't know if this is going to be right for your space. If your people can't convert those customers coming in into an appointment or a sell, because we know once we actually get into that client's home and take a look at the space, we are more likely to close. Okay? Because then at that point, we're talking about budget. What does that look like? And then we can talk about actually being able to do the project. Okay. But that's going to be the most important thing. If your people can't do that, it becomes a big issue. Now you have, say, 20 door swings, 10, 20 door swings, and you're not converting any, and you're closing 1 or 2 people a week, right? And you think that's fucking amazing. Your people are leaving a lot on the table, and it's not necessarily their fault. It's going to take them a long time to truly realize, hey, I need to do this. I need to ask these questions. This is what they're actually asking for. And they're not going to get that if you're not giving them real-time coaching sessions. If I'm not saying give them a coaching session every single fucking interaction. What I'm saying is they need to understand what they're looking at and then also be able to frame it in their minds and be active about how they want to change it. Because right now, their habit loop is a customer comes in, says they want to buy, I'll show them a product, I'll sell, and I'll get commission. On the flip side, if a customer says, I'm just looking, I don't know what to do, I'm not going to make a sell. And that's what we want to move away from. We need to upskill them and train them up so that they can be able to help, right? So that they can be able to answer some basic questions and be able to get what you need. In this case, for an AV location, realistically, it's a site survey. For appliances, if they're looking outside of your standard, counter depth, full size, 36-inch normal fridges, right? Normal dishwashers, normal appliances. If they're looking at the Thermador, Viking, if they're looking at Miele, if they're looking at, Sub-Zero Wolf, those kind of products, hey, unless you give me your specs, I really can't do much. So let's do this, right? I can show you some products, but to really give you a better understanding and to actually give you a true, idea of what you're going to need for your home, let's go ahead and schedule a site survey. We'll be able to go out there, take a look at the space, and ensure that you have the right fit, okay? Because the last thing you want is to have that shit sold and sitting in your fucking warehouse, not picked up, only to come find out from the customer that, oh, yeah, so we went to a different size, right? Or we didn't know it was going to be this size. So this is, those are the things that we can avoid, but we don't know that. Your sellers don't know that until they've had that experience, that conversation, that level of training. They don't know what they don't know. And your job as a leader is to be able to help them get to that point of, okay, yes, you didn't know that, but we're going to be able to overcome that. Let's walk through some of the most common scenarios that you have that walk in through that door. Okay. If you're in wireless and most of your customers come in to, do troubleshooting or do bill payments, it becomes, hey, how can we turn those around into something else? Not, oh, our internet doesn't work, so we can't help you because you're not adding a new line of service. You see how much opportunity is leaving the table? One of the locations I turned around, and it wasn't a bad location to start. For the organization I was with, that location was pushing about 250 to 350 opportunities a month. Okay, some months was 200, some months was a little north of 350, but 350 was essentially the high end. And I was told that location, that was the best they were going to be able to do, and that they thought the staffing was adequate and the leadership there was adequate. A little bit of coaching, a little bit of training, a different leadership with a different mindset focused on training and developing. That location went from having a store manager, an assistant manager, and about 4 full-time employees, okay, about staff of 6 total, to a store manager, 2 assistant managers, and about 15 full-time employees at an authorized retailer, not a corporate location. If you know anything about the wireless retail world, you know those are big fucking numbers for your average run-of-the-mill location. And what did productivity do? They averaged about 6 to 700 units a month on a regular month. During the holiday season, they were breaking the 1,000 unit mark. Okay. And that was after I was told that that amount, when I took over that area, was about as high. That was going to be the best location I had in the area, and that was going to be the top end. A little bit of training, a little bit of focus, and pushing on getting the right head count, because I understood, hey, I don't have the right head count here. Let me staff these up, okay? But first, let me skill my employees up to the level that I need them at. And that's all it took, because they did get people going in with troubleshoots. They did get people going in asking about, making bill payments. And they were just clerking. We broke that habit loop that they had, and we helped build a new habit loop off the old one. Nothing crazy, nothing big, just asking an additional question when that customer came in. And as they did that, they're going a very long way in increasing their performance. Because now they're getting more at-bats, they're getting more opportunity to be able to ask those questions, right? Whereas before they just like, okay, let me get you in and out. It's like, no, you're doing a disservice, because what if they had this question? What if they wanted to do something else? But it skipped their mind. Hey, they're here now. They made their way. They could have paid online, over the phone. They could have called it in. They could have mailed, a snail mail check. They had multiple other ways to make this payment, but they decided to come in. They came in for a reason. So do them right. Ask them those additional questions. And as they started to do that, and they started to see that they were getting rewarded, they started becoming more motivated to continue that. And that's where the location went from, a management team of 2 and a staff of 4 to a management team of 3 and a staff of 15. Full-time employees, everybody. Okay. That is the importance of being able to break things down. Slow it down. Just give real-time 15-minute coaching sessions on what we're doing, and allow them to be able to see the actions that they're taking and reap that reward, and then they will become motivated. The motivation doesn't come before, okay? You can't hope that we're going to make the best. You can't, hey, I need you guys to do this. Hope doesn't do shit for your team, okay? Motivation doesn't do shit for your team. What does do something for your team is when you're focused on training and developing your people so that they can perform at a higher level. And that doesn't mean taking them to an 8-hour fucking coaching session, being like, oh, they're going to take so much back to their markets, to their locations, and we're going to hope to see. Once again, hope is not a fucking plan. Focus on the training, focus on the development, on how this is being delivered and implemented. Okay? Don't get me wrong. A lot of these training courses, a lot of these 8-hour sessions, yes, they're jam-packed full of fucking information. The issue is there's no implementation on that on the back end. There is no way to inspect and ensure that things are being implemented once they get back to their areas. Because you have other shit that's going to pop up. You have other fire drills that are going to come up. And then you're going to say, this is more important than training my team. But then when I'm getting harped on by numbers, right? When your leadership is coming down on you because, hey, why is this location down? Why are your numbers not here? Then you're running even more fire drills. Instead of focusing on what the core issue is, which is training and developing and lack of that. Once you focus on that, you will go a long way in being able to ensure that your team is successful. So I'm going to challenge you to something today. Don't take this and be like, yes, we're going to focus on habits and no. I want you to pick one thing that your team does on a consistent basis. Okay? AV, if you get a lot of window onlookers, window shoppers, how do you convert that into an appointment? Same thing with appliances. What is the one question your team can change when a customer comes in asking about that? What is one question that your team member can ask differently that opens up the conversation for a site survey so that we can actually get a quote and get a better idea of closing that customer? For wireless, if you have if your location's a troubleshoot location, if your location's a, large bill payment location, what is one question that your team can ask? It can be anything from, hey, are you eligible for an upgrade? Are you ready to add that tablet? You're eligible for another line. All right. What is one thing that your team can do differently? Furniture. Okay. A lot of times your people are just like, okay, you're moving to a new location. You're looking for a new bed. Great. What size? What's your budget? Okay. What about the rest of the space? What about the living room? What about the patio? What about the family room, the game room, right? Do they have a mud room? What other spaces are we not asking about? All we need is one question, one additional question to be able to get that customer to open up and give us an actual opportunity. And you don't have to close them all. Remember, guys, 60% of the time, it works all the time. And if you ask that one additional question and your team is able to close, one or two more people out of 10, a 10 to 20% lift on their close rate, that is fucking amazing. That is going to increase what your team is doing and that performance. And then we can talk about that next step in the journey. So I'm going to leave you there, okay? Take that action. Let me know in the comments what you're going to commit to. And guys, I want to say thanks once again for stepping into another episode here at the Sales Manager Academy podcast. Don't forget, hit that like and follow button, and I'll catch you on the next one.